I had just finished a show called Roommates. It wasn't supposed to end as early as it did. I had always imagined that show as being something we could have done for at least like 4 seasons or something like that. But it just sort of evolved into a lot of things, just the point we were all at in our lives, storyline, ending it with a film. And it just didn't seem to make sense to keep going with the show. But I still had that fuel to do a web series. And that's pretty much where RBD came from. From the get-go, I knew RBD was going to be a show about my retrospectives. And because of that, I knew I would be the writer-director for every single episode. Writer because it was dealing with my thoughts and my viewpoints, and it would kind of seem weird to have someone else write about my thoughts. And director because I didn't want to ask them, hey, why don't you direct this show that it's about my thoughts, on stuff I remembered from a long time ago. At the end of the day, the show was essentially a Robot Head Entertainment take on the popular web series that were coming out in like the late 2000s. Web series that dealt with nostalgia, that dealt with looking into the past. It was the Robot Head Entertainment take on that. And it was really more about me. And the show is really the rally call of it. Retrospectives be damned. The title is just shorthand of what I say at the end of every episode. Retrospectives be damned, I'm telling my story. For the first episode, I wanted to cover something that was important to me, but was also something that I know a lot of other folks had experienced themselves. Just the thing that came to my head almost immediately was demo discs. And if I was going to look back at and talk about something, I wanted it to be something that other people might have had their own opinions and thoughts about as well. For the pilot episode, writing, directing, and editing would all be done a lot differently than how they would eventually be done for the 32 episodes that followed. Writing was done by myself, as it usually had always been, and it was a lot more spread out. I had a lot more sketches involved and skits and whatnot. It didn't have like a hosting aspect. It was just very fast-paced. We barely even see the RBD guy, except for bits involving jokes and humors. Everything was led by VO, which would change immediately, starting with episode 2. Directing was done in batches. Really, I did a few bit parts here, a few bit parts there. The Epcot shot that you see obviously was shot months later, or a month later, I can't remember. That wasn't shot on the same day. Voiceover was actually done last. It was all done during editing. So, I would talk to, I would cut a segment, or a segment would be cut, and then the VO would accompany it. So it was done in real time, really, to the cutting of the episode. Speaking of editing, my wife actually cut the first episode. All the other 32 episodes that followed were all edited by me. It was done on Final Cut Express, which was also the first and only time Final Cut Express was used. iMovie was used primarily for the rest of the show, except near the end, the last few episodes were cut with Final Cut Pro. My wife actually convinced me to just edit the rest of the series by myself. Because during the whole editing process, she was telling me, you have a much clearer picture of what you want. And you're sitting here and you're telling me, oh, do it this way. And I'm not really editing. Like, she was literally editing, meaning she was cutting it. But really, it was just like, she was like my proxy arms. And I took her advice. I'm like, man, that's a good idea. Because it was a waste of both of our times to do it any other way. Hence why I would edit the rest of the series by myself. The moment the pilot was done, I released it. Before I could even start thinking about the next episode, about like a month later, or a few weeks later, really, my wife and I moved out of my parents' house. And then once we settled in is when I started working on the rest of the series. It allowed me to flourish with the show because the final 32 episodes would be shot in my first home. The pilot was my last thing I made at my parents' house. And then this show was actually the first thing I made in my new house. So RBD connects those two settings together, which I think is really wonderful.